Good morning and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. If you're in the UK, I hope you haven't been too impacted by these high winds we've been having and stormy weather. I know if you're in the rest of the world, you've had similar things kind of coming and going over the last couple of months. And now it's the turn of the UK. It seems we've had 3 different storms in as many days, and there's one kind of going on outside. It was me at 6:30 this morning, picking up all of the recycling that had blown out of the bin, next door's bin actually, not even our bin, but like blown everywhere, all over the front garden and stuff. So that was me picking it up. Yeah, fun times. So, but anyway, it's quite exciting actually. I mean, I know obviously feel really bad for anyone who's lost all sorts of things, property, and there's been some tragedies as well, which is terrible. But yeah, it's the awesome power of the wind is something to behold for sure. Let's change subject and talk about the awesome power of Microsoft Teams and the development platform and some different things you can do with it. And first of all was a video that I have been trying to put out for a really long time and finally made it out last week. So I'm really happy about that. And the video is all about how you can take Microsoft Teams applications and expose them in Outlook and also on Office.com. That's amazing by itself because suddenly it means that Microsoft Teams apps are not just for Microsoft Teams. They can be for other parts of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem as well, and that's really exciting. And I don't really know where Microsoft are going with this, whether or not it was just an idea to see, could we take Teams apps and expose them elsewhere, or whether it's part of a bigger plan to make what we think of as Teams applications actually Microsoft 365 applications. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But what I can tell you is that if you want to go and try this for yourself, I've done a how-to video where I go through this is like the end game. This is an application that runs side by side in Teams and Outlook. And then I put together a whole video of exactly what you need to do with some links as well, so you can get started. So if that sounds interesting, go give that a go. It should help you get started. You can do it on any application that's a tabbed application in Microsoft Teams. There are some prerequisites around what you need to get it running, but it can definitely be done and it is worth doing. So that is worth checking out. All right, next up. Now, I talked about this last week a little bit because it was news that had come out, but I hadn't yet put the blog post out. I have now done the blog post about it, and that is around the ability to support in-app purchasing in Microsoft Teams. Again, kind of a big feature in terms of making the whole Teams app ecosystem more mature and more like a real app store, I suppose. You've been able to charge money for Teams for quite a long time now. The ability to have a subscription system or like use kind of the existing Microsoft developer platform, the partner center stuff that they've got going on for managing sort of subscriptions and payments. Developers don't have to do all of that. It's all kind of managed for you. You've been able to do that with Microsoft Teams for a while now. What you haven't been able to do is kind of in-app subscription upgrades. So now you can have users start on a free plan. You can pop a dialogue within the application, which is not, it's then like a Microsoft provided dialogue to show the different subscription plans and let users move from one subscription to another. It handles all the money, the charging, all that kind of stuff. There is a weird thing about it that I didn't appreciate when I talked about this last week that I have since found out through looking through the documentation that I did want to spend a moment talking about. In order to make this work, in order to implement this, your application needs a new permission. It's a resource-specific consent permission, and it's been created especially for this purpose. It's called inapp-purchase.allow.user. Now, for me, that was a little odd because permissions are usually around restricting access to data or to functionality. This is sort of that in that I suppose the restriction is around the ability to upgrade a purchase plan or subscription plan, but it feels more like being used as a feature flag than it does for like a security permission. So I started thinking about, well, why make it a security permission? Why make somebody like the owner of a team or an admin say that yes, users are able to do this? And I don't really know, except that maybe it's, I don't know, maybe the intent there is that somebody who's in charge in some respects, like the team owner maybe, is kind of aware of the fact that users might be able to upgrade the subscription for the applications that are in their channel and then somehow pay for those. Or I'm a bit unclear about who actually pays in this model, whether or not the user pays at the time of doing the upgrade of the subscription, or whether it just kind of gets charged to the account somehow, and whether users, maybe that's why you need the permission, because users then are able to spend the company's money. So maybe that's an issue. I don't know how that's going to play out particularly, and whether or not you can not have that permission and still have the rest of the app work and just not be able to kind of upgrade the subscription. I have lots of questions. I haven't tried any of this out. I do want to, but I just haven't had the chance to in the last week or so. Yeah, lots and lots of outstanding questions, but we will find out together as we kind of go through and try this stuff out. There's also a specific preview offer type that you can add to your application if you haven't got it all set up, and if you wanted to test the end-to-end process of going through a subscription flow and upgrading it without actually spending money, you can do that with the preview offer type. And there's some instructions. I'll put a link in the blog post I've done about it. I put a link there to go and get the information about how you set up that specific preview offer. But yeah, this is kind of interesting, this ability to upgrade applications. It makes them more like real, I say real apps, you know what I mean? Like when we think of apps now, we think of iOS apps or Android apps, and they have this fairly well-defined model now of subscriptions and plans and in-app upgrades. So it's interesting to see this come to Teams apps, and it'll be interesting to see what developers do with it. I'm not quite sure where this is going, if that makes sense. I'm not quite sure whether this is something that the enterprise wants for Microsoft Teams applications, but also maybe I'm limiting my scope of my thinking too much, because I should maybe also be thinking about Teams Personal and the consumer space, and whether or not this model would make more sense in Teams Personal land. Maybe it will. So maybe this is all groundwork for, when the Teams Personal app supports applications better and more fully, whether or not that's where this is going. But also maybe I might be completely wrong about the enterprise, and they do want these subscription models and users to be able to kind of do these in-app upgrades. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that functionality is now available. So you can go and check it out yourself. Okay, let's talk about something else. This came up in the last couple of days, and so we're switching gears now to the Microsoft documentation, away from kind of my blog post stuff. Microsoft documentation, and there's a new training guide, a new kind of, don't know what they're called really, a walkthrough, I suppose, to help you understand how everything works. And this is one that I've not seen before, which is why I wanted to talk to you about it. It's about using the file upload feature in Teams Bot. So in Bot Framework, which is what you use to create bots for Microsoft Teams, there's an ability to upload a file to Teams from a bot. So from a specific bot, you can choose the file, and the bot will then upload it to Teams and put it somewhere. And you can then kind of receive that file that's being given to the bot as an attachment. So the other thing you can do, by the way, is if users put files inline, like images inline, so paste in an image, you can get that as a bot as well. And this walkthrough, this kind of guide, is all about helping you do that. So it's got a number of different steps, and these are really nice because they walk you through everything you need to do. So you go through the kind of prerequisites, and then there's some very good instructions for exactly what you need to do, exactly what you need to set up in Azure for the bot framework, lots of screenshots, lots of descriptive guides. It's really nice. This is exactly the level of detail I think that people will find useful. So what these tend to be a little light on is telling you why. So I think it is worth It's worth going through them. Don't get me wrong. It is worth doing. This stuff is useful. I think it shows you what's possible rather than sort of particularly teaching you exactly how it all works, if that makes sense. But it's good. I think the reason is, like, a lot of this doesn't focus on the code. It's more about the setup. So all of these steps are all how you set it all up in Azure, how you link together your application, your bot framework, and your code. This doesn't really go through the detail of what the code is doing. So you can kind of tell that, because if you go to test, basically what they're saying is, like, go and download our test app, set it up, and go. So it doesn't really go through the detail of what the code does, but that doesn't matter. I think this is still a very useful process, because so much of the confusion and the concern, if you like, or the hesitancy that I see certainly around people doing apps in Teams is the setup. It can be really complicated to set up this stuff, where you've got to understand, Azure Bot Framework, Azure Web Services, Azure AD Apps, your code, how they all talk to each other in the cloud, how they're all secured. There's lots of stuff going on there. So having a walkthrough that takes you through, okay, if you've got a bot in Bot Framework and you want to get it running, these are the steps you need to do. This is what you need to go through. And I've done similar videos and blog posts and stuff about it. So it's good to have this in here in the bag, I think, as well. It's useful information. And also, the code that they're telling you to download is all open source. It's all on GitHub. So you can look at that code and you know what it does now, because you can play with it with the file upload, and you can try these different things out. Now you can look through the code and see. You don't need Microsoft to walk you through it and show it how it works, right? You can take it yourself and figure out how it works. So I think this is good for that. I think it's just being aware of what it is and what it isn't before you get into it. But if that sounds interesting, then go and check that out as a new, different type of way, if you like, of learning how to develop things with Microsoft Teams. All right, that's nearly it for this week, I think. But just before I went, I want to tell you about something that is coming up on March the 23rd, so little over a month away. I'm going to be talking at Teams Nation. It's an online event. It's a community-focused conference, sort of focused on Microsoft Teams. It's one day only, but they are packing in a lot of sessions in that one day. So this is my screen grab of the session builder. It's absolutely bonkers. There's a lot of different sessions going on. I think I'm around in maybe here somewhere, maybe there. But anyway, I'm going to be talking about how you can take your Microsoft Teams environment, how you can take Azure Communication Services and get the best of both worlds for a B2C experience, so business to consumer, where your business users want to be using Microsoft Teams, your consumers want to have something that is much less like Microsoft Teams because they want something that just works on their browser, is branded to the company, doesn't require them to download an application, doesn't look and feel like Microsoft Teams particularly, because normal people in the real world, maybe they use Microsoft Teams at work, but if they don't, they probably don't know what it is yet. So they would rather kind of take away a lot of the functionality and just have a very cut down experience. So Azure Communication Services lets you do that. And then there's some interesting kind of integrations you can do as well. The fun part about the session I'm doing in a month's time is that I'm going to be building the application kind of as I go along during the session. So that should be fun. So we'll see how that goes. And then I'm going to put the code on GitHub afterwards. So even if you don't make the session, you can still get the code afterwards and go through it and see how it's all been put together. So that's happening, Teams Nation, March 23rd. It's 100% free. It's all happening online. So if you can make it online on the 23rd, you can come and join us. I expect it will be recorded as well. You do need to register. So you need to go to teamsnation.rocks/register. There's an after party as well that is happening in Altspace VR. So don't miss that. So that's happening soon. All right, I think that's everything. Let's think about the week coming up. Let's have a think. We've got what's going on. Yeah, nothing major planned in terms of events from Microsoft, I don't think. We're starting to think about Build, I guess. That's coming up soon in the springtime. So product teams everywhere will be kind of gearing up any announcements they've got for Build. So we might see some of that code and documentation come out in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try and put out another video. I did one last year about how I used OBS and Microsoft Teams in meetings to kind of as like a soundboard to make meetings a bit more interesting. So I will try and get an updated version of that video out, because I've changed some of the kind of the way I've done that with OBS and Teams working together. I've kind of changed some things to make it a little bit better. So I want to do an updated video to talk about that. But yeah, anything else that comes out, I'll do blog posts about, and we'll talk about it next week. But in the meantime, whatever it is you're doing this week, have a great one, and I will talk to you again next time.